Hey, it's Nay. Welcome back to Nay's Little Garden and Home. So I'm starting a little small series of really trying to start gardening, getting into gardening. This video is going to be called So You Want to Start a Garden. We're gonna start generalizing. We're gonna go through the steps in general, and then I'm gonna do another video where I talk about varieties that I really like and why, so you can make different choices, and I'll give you options. I'll go into detail about what you could really grow with what kind of space you have. I'll go into detail about growing inside, go into detail about going outside. So gotta hit that subscribe button so we can jump right into it, because we're heading right into the growing season for real. So you'll want to start a garden. There are some things that you do need to do that. So the first thing you're going to need is something to hold the soil. Now, you can most definitely do in ground. You're going to probably need to dig up a little bit, like just, loosen up the soil. If you have grass already, you're gonna have to turn that over and all of that. I do personally recommend, and I feel like a lot of gardeners recommend not doing that all the time. The thing about soil, the difference between soil and dirt is not living. There's nothing living in the dirt to provide the proper nutrients and things to keep things alive, right? The bugs and the microbiome, so on and so forth. So you don't want to mess with that if you're doing in ground too often. If you don't want to or cannot grow in ground, or you don't have the space to grow in ground like that, you can do something like a raised bed. So let's say you do have a little backyard in which you can put a raised bed. That would work for you. Now you're using soil you're bringing in. So now you can get decent to amazing soil that's going to have a lot of good, healthy things inside of it. If a raised bed sounds expensive or feels too big for your environment, you can do something like a pot or a grow bag. I do suggest starting with just a couple when it comes to a pot or a grow bag, and you can get any size. Now, I am going to recommend you don't want anything smaller than 5 gallons. When you do something even smaller than like 3 gallon, 1 gallon, that type of thing, you're gonna limit the things you could grow in that forever, right? Because tomatoes need a bigger bag. I'm gonna suggest anywhere from 5 up to 20. The average person should be able to lift those size grow bags. Obviously, go off of you specifically. If you think a 20-gallon grow bag filled up with soil is too heavy, then do a 15. But I would say the bigger sizes are better because you can plant more things in them, thus giving you options throughout the years. A grow bag is gonna be lighter than a pot. A grow bag is going to leach more water out than a pot. So if you think you're gonna potentially be an overwaterer, a grow bag might be in your best interest. The other thing you can think about is something like a green stalk. So when you really have limited space or you have no soil whatsoever, you could do a green stalk, which is vertical growing. I'm gonna do a whole video on that separately as well. And that is gonna give you multiple tiers, which is just essentially a pot that has been sectioned off to have pockets with a big open space, and you can stack them. And I think it's either you can get 3 tiers or 5 tiers, and each tier has, I believe, 5 pockets, maybe 6. And you can plant out a different plant in each of those pockets. The thing to remember about something like a green stalk is the size that you're gonna have to grow smaller things in there or expect smaller yields because there's less soil. You still are gonna get good harvest. You have to be mindful of the seeds or starts that you go ahead and purchase to put in there so you can maximize those yields. The next thing is the soil itself. If you're doing in ground, You might not have to top it with the soil. You're going to have to top it with what we're going to talk about next, but stay with me. If you're growing in a raised bed, pot, grow bag, or green stalk, you're going to need to purchase soil. Please do not buy the in-ground soil bags. Do not buy the topsoil bags. You need potting soil or raised bed mix. These have been mixed with things that keep aeration in there so it doesn't compact in your pot, raised bed, or grow bag, so that it doesn't become like cement and then the plants struggle to grow and build their roots and do what they got to do to make produce for you. There are type of soil bags you can buy that I'm sure something will grow out of it, but it's a lot of chemical fertilizers and stuff in there that, listen, you can get it for cheap. Then you have decent, where the price is mid-priced and they're decent and you can always work them up, right? To add a little extra ting and ting to make it even better. And then you got like the, the really decent, really, really good, which is going to cost you more money. And then you really don't have to do much with that. And then you have the exceptional, and you really don't need to do anything at all with those. And the prices are going to vary. The next thing, which is going to be useful regardless of what you're growing in, is going to be fertilizer and or compost. Now, I don't have any major personal experience with compost. I went ahead and I've been using fertilizer. I did go buy the Black Cow compost, 1 bag this year. I may buy one more and just toss, one bag in a raised bed, another bag in a raised bed, and see how that does. Compost and fertilizer feeds the plants and the ground. The best thing you can do is feed the ground. So things like bone meal, blood meal, feather meal, all of these things are going to feed the soil, which in turn will feed your crops. You can also skip that and go to chemical fertilizers that will in fact feed the plant directly. This might sound like a good thing and it will do you some good, but long term it's going to cause you problems because you're going to have to keep doing that because you're not developing and building up the microbiome in soil. So you can do different types of fertilizer, like this is a solid fertilizer and then you have liquid fertilizer. This is, I'm not really trying to sell this to you. I just want to tell you how getting a more natural type of fertilizer is beneficial. This is Trifecta Plus from the M.I. Gardener. So this description they have on here is the ultimate soil supercharger for organic gardening with added trace minerals, beneficial bacteria, and fungi. If you don't know anything about growing, you just heard bacteria and fungi and went, girl, what are we doing? We don't need to consume those things like that. But plants like to take those things in, and it builds up the nutrients, and it builds up the flavor, and it does a little thing, ting and ting and ting and ting. And that's why you want it in there. This is a 5-10-4. I'll probably do a whole video on discussing how fertilizers go about the numbers that they give. There's a whole lot of things in here. Just know nitrogen, phosphate, potassium, calcium, magnesium, sulfur, iron. These are all things that are very beneficial. And then also contains non-plant food items. They have a bunch of different mycorrhizal bacteria, fungi, a lot of things in here. This is going to feed the soil and not directly the plant. Thus, the soil is going to then feed the plant. And it's going to keep doing that, right? Now you're creating an ecosystem, right? How can I give you an example? So I'm going to give you probably not the greatest example, but walk with me here. Let's say you have a zoo and you have animals in this zoo, right? You can choose to feed the animals with not alive things so they can just eat. And now they're dependent on you to make sure you give it that food. Or you can put the prey that those animals eat into the zoo place for them to be able to hunt them down. And if you do it right, and maybe do even enough of the prey, some of the prey will survive over time and keep reproducing to keep making food for the animals that you have in the zoo. Does that make sense? So the one where you're giving it the not alive prey, because you've hunted for the animal, is making that animal 100% dependent on you, and now it's not doing what it needs to even to survive by itself. Versus giving it prey and trying to give it enough prey around that some of the prey will survive over time, and so that the animal learns how to hunt. The animal can go and keep getting food and is not 100% reliant on you. Of course, you're going to need to go back in and keep checking and making sure there's enough prey, and sometimes you're going to have to replenish that. That is what something like this, where it's not chemicals, it's more natural, is going to help with like the replenishing of it, but also have its own base, so it's less reliant on you. Derived from, and I've said some of this already, bone meal, green sand, potash, kelp meal, blood meal, poultry manure, urea, feather meal, cottonseed meal, dolomitic lime, feather meal, cottonseed meal. Oh wait, why am I repeating myself? Epsom salt, rock gypsum, azomite, rock phosphate, chelated iron, alpha meal, and humic acid, calcium dihydrate. There's a lot of things in here, guys. And these are all things that, quite honestly, if I'm going to keep it a buck with you, you really could get yourself. Okay? There's animals that shed feathers. That's the feather meal in here. And you break it down. Lime, you could break that down too. Blood meal, right? There's animals that you can get that stuff, dry it out, crush it up. That's blood meal. Bone meal is you dehydrate the bones, crush it up, and then you have bone meal. A lot of the things that you're hearing is literally how they're saying it. And you could make a lot of these things yourself, or you could also just go ahead and buy that. Fertilizer/compost, things that feed your soil and or feed your plants are very important to really give you quality ingredients. The next is the seed/starts. Now, when you're really fresh starting out, there is nothing wrong with starting anything from seeds. However, the odds of you ending up failing something and then getting upset and maybe not wanting to do it again are higher with seeds. If you have a little money to play with, and or you're going to start much smaller, which I advise, starts are honestly the way to go. You can get organic or starts that are not using heavy chemicals from a lot of places, even your big box stores these days. I just went up in a big box store and they have a whole organic section. Now, I do recommend you take your behind to a local greenhouse and support your local businesses. I do. And the prices are pretty amazing. And then you can ask those people questions. And these are the people who are growing these things. Okay? Learn some things from these people. Ask questions. They will answer you. They will answer you, and they'll do so enthusiastically, and they're going to help you. Probably, right? You are much more limited on the varieties when you're just purchasing starts. These people are trying to, in fact, make money. So they're going to do the things that people are more likely to pick up, as well as they know are going to grow in your area. That's why I'm offering up to you your local greenhouse versus like a big box store where they're just kind of getting all different types of things that might not even work in your zone. The next thing, seeds, great. Seeds are great. There are hundreds to thousands of different varieties of just about everything you can think of. At least several dozens. Broccoli, cauliflower, spinach, lettuce, tomato, peppers, potato, celery, squash, whether winter or summer. I can keep going on and on. If it's something you can consume, and we're not talking about animal products right now, we're talking about anything else, you can grow it. And they will give you multiple varieties. Things like peppers and tomatoes, it will frighten you, the amount of varieties. Pick a color, pick a size, any size. Pick a growth habit, any growth habit. Pick a plant, a leaf type. Like, tomatoes and peppers are kind of earth-shattering, to be honest with you. There's so many varieties out there that you could really grow so many different things, and keep trying. You have a smaller space, they have things like dwarf and micro dwarf tomatoes. They have peppers that you can do like lunchbox, smaller peppers that will grow faster and ripen faster. They have spicy peppers, they have mild peppers. Guys, The options are endless almost if you go by seeds. I'm not telling, pick which one works best for you because you can always work your way into getting seeds. I will do a whole video talking about seeds as well as the seeds that are okay to kind of falling down the rabbit hole and maybe have a few different varieties, and the ones you don't be too much with them because you gotta use them up within that year or two. Otherwise, the germination is gonna be crappy. There will be a video on that. Next is light/sun. You need a light source. If you're growing your garden outside, the sun. And it sounds so simple, like the sun is gonna hit it. That is not fact, okay? You need to look at where you want to grow and make sure there's about 6+ hours of sunlight. Most things are going to need about 6+ hours of direct sunlight. Not it's the daytime and it's bright outside. As in the sun needs to be shining down directly on it and not like I'm gonna grow it over here because it's still bright over here because the sun is not going on the plant, right? That helps the plant keep growing. They do something called photosynthesis, right? The plants are feeding and all of those things using the sunlight and all of those good things. So you need light. You need some type of light. If you're growing indoors, you can, there are many different lights you can use. I personally, especially if you're gonna grow from to harvest, would get plant lights specifically. I see some people grow with like the shop lights, and I've seen it work. I've struggled with it, and a lot of times the plants are leggy, and I would suggest like plant lights. You can actually get pretty reasonably priced plant lights these days, and then you can get really amazing lights that are going to cost you some money. And then there's a middle price range. I would suggest you look around that middle price range if the budget allows. If not, the cheaper lights are going to work. I've worked with $23 lights, and they grow the things just fine, okay? The next is water. You cannot expect to go on a 2.5-week vacation and there's no rain scheduled or not enough rain and think your plants are going to be here when you get back. Your plants are going to need watering, and they're going to need it regularly. And the more the plants grow, the more water they're going to need. And you're going to have to be mindful. But you also need to be mindful not to overwater your plants, because there is such a thing as too much of anything, right? You can't drink too much water, right? It can make you sick. Same for the plants. You want your soil to be moist, but not sopping wet for most plants. Some plants can handle less water. Some plants can handle more water, but for the most part, you want to keep most plants happy. You want to keep the soil damp for sure, but not dripping wet. I will talk about that specifically and some ways that you can go about checking and to make sure, as well as the amount of watering that might occur depending on what you're growing in. The last thing is patience. Okay? Gardening is a marathon and not a sprint. You're going to hear gardeners be like, this is a fast crop. Guys, they're going to tell you 30 days. When you're starting gardening and you're like, oh, it's going to grow fast, and you look at the packet or you look at the card thing that they give you when you get a start, and that ish says 60 to 75 days, you're going to be like, are you serious? Yes. All good things for the most part take time, right? They take time. Tomatoes, peppers, the good chunk of things are gonna run you about 60+ days, okay? There are a good amount of things that are in the 90 to 120 days. Most things are between the days of 60 to 120 days. I'm going to break that down for you very specifically in another video, because it depends on the things, and that could be from seed or that could be from a start that you have to grow from 6 weeks. Guys, to 8 weeks or 4 weeks. There's this stuff. We'll talk about that in another video. At the end of the day, I feel like I probably made that sound like a lot of work, but when you break down the steps and you go step by step and you start small, and you don't burn a lot of money starting this, and you slowly expand over time, I think you're going to really enjoy this and you're going to reap a lot of benefits from this. I am not here to fearmonger you, okay? You can most definitely buy things at the store. Guys, we are here for a good time, not forever. And of course, you want to be the healthiest you can be, but I feel like oftentimes you come on here and people are inciting fear. Don't garden because you're scared or just because you're scared. Garden for other reasons. And I'm not going to tell you what reasons you need to use. Pick a reason, right? I gardened partly because I was concerned, but also partly because once I fell down the rabbit hole of what I can grow and I can't get that in the store, are you kidding me? That I started, I bake and cook a lot of things from scratch, and using my produce or farm stands produce is definitely different than the grocery store typically, and the pricing is going to be better, right? So there's just so many things to go into it. So like I said, I am going to have this little series going on, and we're going to really break down all of the steps to gardening. And I want to make it as beginner friendly, and not even just beginner friendly. I just want to make it the norm that people grow something. You don't have to grow the broccoli, the carrots, the tomatoes, and you could even just grow herbs. Growing something that you can consume. And there's flowers you can consume, right? We're talking teas and stuff. I will have a video on that. There's just so many options. And I think any small scale to medium scale to big scale, any way you want to go about it, we're going to figure it out together. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that like button. And hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.